Security and Government Affairs. We're here to discuss two important agencies within our government, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, FLRA, and the Office of Government Ethics, OGE. The FLRA is an independent administrative agency, as you all know, responsible for enforcing federal employees' collective bargaining rights. The OGE is an independent agency that leads and oversees the executive branch ethics program. Together, these two bodies ensure that federal employees' rights are protected and our government adheres to the highest standards of ethics. These are vital functions, and I look forward to exploring more with our nominees here today. And I want to welcome our nominees and their families if they're here with them, and congratulations. Thank you, each of you, for your public service, as well as your willingness to serve in these important positions. I'm going to be chairing this hearing until Senator Peters arrives. We want to move forward with this hearing right on time because we have another afterward, and I'm going to turn to the ranking member.
All right. Well, thank you, Chairman. Today, as Chairman Blumenthal just mentioned, the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee will hold a hearing on 3 nominations. I'm honored to welcome Colleen Kiko, Anne Wagner, and David Hitman. I want to thank the 3 of you for your intention to serve our country as public servants. While preparing for this hearing, I was struck by how many of you drew inspiration to enter public service from those close to you. Like yourselves, I was surrounded by individuals who dedicated their lives to serving their fellow Americans, including my father, who was a police officer for 30 years, but also a long lineage of people serving in the military, and now continued by my son serving in the military as well. Combined with the lessons you've learned from those individuals, you have also added the experiences of your professional careers. Together, these have prepared the 3 of you for this opportunity to serve the nation. Ms. Kiko, Ms. Wagner, should you be confirmed to these positions with the advice and consent of the United States Senate, you'll be charged with resolving complaints of unfair labor practices, determining the appropriateness of units for labor organization representation, adjudicating exceptions for arbitrators' awards, adjudicating legal issues relating to the duty to bargain, and resolving impasses during negotiations. Both of you had the track records to fulfill these duties. You, Ms. Kiko, have already served a term as the FLRA chairwoman, and you, Ms. Wagner, have a long career in this field, with your most recent work being as the Associate Special Counsel with the Office of Special Counsel. I look forward to hearing both of your testimonies and asking you further questions to determine your suitability for these roles. And finally, Mr. Hitman, should you be confirmed as Director of the Office of Government Ethics, you must be able to lead and oversee the executive branch ethics program by making and interpreting ethics laws and regulations, support and train executive branch ethics officials, administer the executive branch financial disclosure systems, monitor senior leaders' compliance with ethics committee, ensure agencies comply with ethics programs requirements, and make ethics information available to the public. Like Ms. Kiko and Ms. Wagner, your resume speaks for itself, as you have a long history with the State Department and currently manage the department's ethics program. Thank you for being here. I look forward to hearing your testimony and asking you questions. Once again, I'd like to thank all the nominees for their desire and willingness to serve. I look forward to learning more about your qualifications and hearing your testimonies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Marshall. I'll introduce the nominees in order that they're seated. Colleen Kiko, nominated to serve an additional term as member of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, has served since 2017 in that capacity and has led the agency as chairman from 2017 to 2021. She holds a JD from Scalia Law School and a BS degree from North Dakota State University. Anne Wagner, nominated to be a member of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, currently serves as an Associate Special Counsel in the Office of Special Counsel. That's a role she's held since 2015. Ms. Wagner received her bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame and her law degree from George Washington University School of Law. Mr. David Hitman, nominated to be Director of the Office of Government Ethics, served as the Department of State's Assistant Legal Advisor for Ethics and Financial Disclosure since 2016. He holds a JD from Stanford Law School, an MA from the University of Texas at Austin, and a BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Our custom, as you may know, is to swear the witnesses, so if you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. If any of you have opening statements, we would be pleased to hear them. Ms. Kiko?
Good morning, Chairman Blumenthal, Ranking Member Marshall, members of the committee. I thank you and your staff for all the kindness that you have shown me as I prepared for this hearing. My daughter Sarah is with me today. My husband Phil Kiko is tied up on a matter on the other side of the hill, or he would be here today. I appreciate all the love and support provided by him and all my family during this process. I would also like to thank Anna Molpus, Murray Duncan, David Eddy, and Rebecca Osborne from the FLRA for their kind assistance throughout this process. And I'm especially grateful for the Chairman Grunman, who has been ever supportive and a pleasure to work with. As someone who started their federal career as a GS3 clerk typist, I am truly honored to have been renominated to serve as a member of the Federal Labor Relations Authority. I thank President Biden for the opportunity to serve in this capacity, should I be confirmed. My dedication to federal service was influenced by my parents. My father, Lawrence E. Duffy, proudly spent over 49 years, almost a half a century, in the federal service before retiring. After a stint in the U.S. Army, he was a railway mail carrier for the Postal Service in North Dakota, and later became a U.S. Customs inspector at the North Dakota-Canada border. His work ethic, extreme pride in his job, and impeccable character were examples for me, and to this day I strive to live up to them. My mother, Angie Duffy, always encouraged all of us to strive for careers to broaden our horizons. She pushed all of us to be strong and independent. I would like to point out a few areas of my career that make me particularly qualified for this position. I'm an employee of this agency. I was an employee of this agency at its inception, when the duties of the Assistant Secretary of Labor for Labor Management Relations were transferred into the new FLRA in 1979. So I was there when the agency opened its doors, and I was there celebrating with its first birthday cake. After joining the newly established FLRA, I worked in almost every component of the agency. In a regional office, I investigated unfair labor practice charges, chaired representational hearings, monitored federal union elections, and conducted training for unions and agencies. In the authority component, I reviewed representational disputes, administrative law judge decisions, and drafted decisions for the authority members. My last position before I left to attend law school was a supervisory labor relations specialist managing procedural motions for the agency. The FLRA has played an important role in shaping me into a professional employee. I graduated from Anton and Scalia Law School in Arlington in '86, and just 19 years later, I would find myself back at the FLRA serving as the Senate-confirmed General Counsel. Another 12 years later, I was confirmed to serve as member of the authority and designated by the President to serve as chairman. My career keeps taking me back to my FLRA roots. My time as chairman of the agency provided me with unique insights into the challenges facing the agency. Steering the agency through the unprecedented COVID-19 public health challenge was one of the greatest challenges and most significant accomplishments of my career in public service. As chairman, I also partnered with the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service to create a successful pilot program for mediating negotiability disputes, oversaw many elements of the agency's ongoing transition from paper to electronic files, including significant improvements in its e-filing and case management systems, and involved employees from all agency components in innovative teams to implement the FLRA's strategic plan and address opportunities for improvement from the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. As chairman and member, I have worked with my colleagues to resolve unfair labor practice disputes, determine the appropriateness of units for labor representation, adjudicated exceptions to arbitrators' awards, and resolve legal issues relating to the duty to bargain. I'm continually impressed with the FLRA's employees, who are some of the most dedicated public employees I have ever met. I believe my 35 years in the federal government, 20 years in the labor field, will continue to serve me well in this agency, where we are commissioned to provide leadership relating to matters under the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute and to effectively administer the 9 specific mandates of the statute. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to appear before you, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Kiko. Ms. Wagner.
Good morning, Chairman Blumenthal, Ranking Member Marshall. I'd like to also thank the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you today. It is an honor to have been nominated by President Biden to serve as a member of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, and a privilege to appear before you to seek Senate confirmation of my nomination. I would also like to take a moment to express my deep appreciation to those without whom I would not be here today. First, to my parents, George and Kay Wagner, for their unfailing love and support during my childhood and throughout my life. To my sisters, brother, and their families for their friendship, humor, and encouragement. To my friends and colleagues throughout my career for their generous guidance and inspiring dedication to the law. Finally, to my dear family, my husband, Alan, daughters, Katie and Nora, who are here today, and Carlin in Texas, whose love has carried me on this journey every step of the way. In 1978, Congress enacted the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute as part of its comprehensive legislative reform of the federal civil service. It established the FLRA as the agency responsible for providing leadership in federal sector labor management relations through policies, guidance, and case law. Although much has changed since its inception, the FLRA's role remains as vital today as it was over 45 years ago. The public interest in ensuring that federal workers and management fully engage with each other to achieve the most effective and efficient government remains clear. I wholeheartedly support the authority's mission, and if confirmed, will commit myself to ensuring that the FLRA fulfills the critical purpose that Congress entrusted to it. In my decades-long career, I have represented federal employees as a labor union staff attorney. I've worked as a neutral adjudicator of federal employee claims and served at the highest levels of agency management in the senior executive service. If confirmed, I believe that my substantial experience in addressing employment and labor law issues from all sides will be valuable in carrying out my duties as an FLRA member. If confirmed, I also very much look forward to working again with Chairman Susan Grunman and with member Colleen Kiko to fulfill the FLRA's important mission of providing robust leadership in the federal labor management relations sphere. I'm humbled by and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Wagner. Mr. Hitman.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Blumenthal and Ranking Member Marshall. I thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today. I'd like to acknowledge Senator Peters, Senator Paul, and the other members of the committee as well. I'm honored that President Biden has nominated me to serve as the Director of the Office of Government Ethics. I'd like to recognize the support I've received from the Office of Government Ethics at the State Department and throughout the executive branch ethics community with regard to my nomination, but also throughout my career as an ethics official and in public service. I would also like to recognize my family, my wife Carolyn, and my sons Owen and Miles, all of whom I love so very much and who are with me this morning. They motivate and inspire me and fill me with pride every day. I would also like to acknowledge the love and support I've always received from my parents, Jim and Molly Heidema. They both had careers in public service, my mother as a teacher, and my father working for the federal government. Most importantly, they've always modeled a high degree of integrity and a commitment to helping others. I'm fortunate to have a wonderful brother, John, and I want to remember my brother, Philip, who is no longer with us, and recognize my extended family, including my mother-in-law and father-in-law, Pat and Cy Robbins. OGE's mission has never been more critical, as its work forms one part of a broader struggle against the growing cynicism and distrust that can undermine our democratic self-government. The ethics laws promote integrity in government, requiring that officials' decisions and use of public resources must not be influenced by their personal financial interests, their personal connections and relationships, or by any desire to benefit themselves or others rather than the national interest. Beyond that, the ethics laws recognize the importance of public trust, and they are designed to bolster public confidence in the integrity of the federal workforce. There is good news. Federal employees do have a strong sense of mission and a desire to do things the right way. There are outliers, of course, which is why OGE supports the Inspectors General, the Department of Justice, and others who investigate and pursue accountability for ethics breaches. But for the most part, ethics officials are in a position to support federal employees in achieving a goal they already share. There's more good news. Agency ethics programs are full of ethics officials who are smart, earnest, and committed to this cause. I know because I've worked with them. I see OGE's role as providing overall direction, but also partnering with agency ethics programs and supporting their good work. OGE itself is full of talented and committed officials. In my years leading the State Department ethics program, I have worked with many colleagues at OGE on a wide range of topics. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I would be proud to be part of the OGE team. While people are the strength of the executive branch ethics program, I'm open-eyed about the challenges. The breakdown in trust that I mentioned earlier increases scrutiny of federal employees and the executive branch ethics program. This means we must be ever more effective in supporting employees and deepening the culture of ethics compliance. We must be clear in explaining what the law requires, both to the federal workforce and the public. We must support each other in courageously providing sound ethics guidance, even when it is unwelcome, and in pursuing enforcement of the ethics laws where necessary. As the pace of change in our society and economy picks up, we must be nimble in updating outdated requirements and in providing guidance and an appropriate regulatory structure to address emerging issues. And of course, we must do all of this with limited resources. In his confirmation hearing, the previous director of OGE noted that OGE finds itself underfunded, understaffed, and overmissioned. That remains the case, both for OGE and for many agency ethics programs. And so, as we consider any changes in the executive branch ethics program, we must keep practicality in mind and seek to leverage support and adopt efficient approaches to the greatest degree possible. I'm open-minded about how best to tackle these challenges. I do believe that my experience in managing a complex ethics program at the State Department offers a valuable perspective. If confirmed, I would also rely on the strong foundation and expertise already in place at OGE. I would seek to cultivate an even deeper sense of partnership with the broader executive branch ethics community, and I would welcome input from outside government as well. I know that many in Congress have an interest in ethics reform. I look forward to answering your questions today, and I pledge to work with the Congress on these issues if I am confirmed. So thank you again for considering my nomination.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you for your opening statements. I have a couple of preliminary questions that are standard for all nominees, and I think they're answerable by yes or no. First, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
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 Second, do you know of anything, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
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 Finally, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request, summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes.
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 Thank you. I have just a couple more questions. Maybe I can ask Ms. Kiko and Ms. Wagner. Could you speak to the challenges that the FLRA experiences when faced with a flat budget, as it has been for many years? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, the Federal Labor Relations Authority has been flat funded for quite a few years. And when that happens, we have approximately 80% of our budget is personnel. And when that happens, you have to look at new ways to try and figure out how to meet the budgets. And generally, it's difficult. So in the past, what we have had to do is to close some regional offices down, and in an effort to save the people, we decided to get rid of some of the space. Just recently, the Federal Labor Relations Authority in the headquarters office had 2 floors in their building, and now we've consolidated to 1 floor. And so we're trying to do what we can to live within our budget, but it's challenging, not only to get the cases done, but also to continue to serve our customers. That should answer your question.
Ms. Wagner, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that topic.
Senator Blumenthal, I have not had the privilege of being at the FLRA, and so I don't really have an insider's view in terms of the particular internal challenges that the authority might be facing. But I think the budget for a flatline budget is difficult when an agency is responsible for producing high-quality, efficient adjudications of caseloads that continue to go up. So if confirmed, I would certainly do whatever I can to support the efforts that I believe Chairman Grumman has already undertaken with the other members of the authority to pursue an enhanced budget for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Hitman, first of all, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Perfect, thank you.
I know you've had experience at the Department of State in this kind of ethics review and enforcement. Would you anticipate the challenges or the issues are the same now in this present position for which you've been nominated as they were at the Department of State?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think in some ways, one of the nice features of working at the State Department is the breadth of the agency's mission and the breadth of the ethics issues we have the opportunity to encounter. But I do think that obviously the work of OGE is at a completely different scale, and it's important to recognize just how diverse and varied agencies, their missions, their workforces, the ethics challenges they face are. So while I think I have solid preparation, there will also be a chance to learn, and it will be important to be open-minded about how the executive branch ethics program as a whole, but also how specific agencies should target and tailor their efforts to uphold integrity to the highest degree possible.
And your service has been nonpartisan over these years, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Partisanship never enters into my work. I've been proud to serve in the federal government and as head of the ethics office throughout multiple administrations of different parties, and that would continue to be my approach.
Thank you. I'll turn to Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not as familiar, perhaps, with the jobs that you all have, the departments that you represent as a fairly new senator. I'd like for you to just take 1 or 2 minutes each and tell me, in you all's case, Ms. Wagner and Ms. Kiko, what is the role of the FLRA? What is your job? What is your purpose? And think it like you're talking to a high school government class. Dumb it down to that level for me. So, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you, Senator Marshall. The role of the FLRA is one that Congress established to provide leadership in the area of federal labor relations programs throughout the executive branch. It does this by issuing policies, guidance, but primarily through ruling on cases that come before it. So cases such as unfair labor practice cases, negotiability appeals, cases that Member Kiko alluded to in her opening statement. And it's through this, the development of case law that allows the sort of predictability to come into the federal labor relations programs throughout the government that I think promotes certainly Congress has found, but I do think my experience has seen that it promotes efficiency and effective government.
Okay. Ms. Kiko, would you follow up? I know it's the same department, but you've had some more experience, so.
Well, I'll go backwards just a little bit. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. That collective bargaining was something new in the federal government. And so back, there was an Executive Order 10988 that was originally established collective bargaining in the federal government. Then that executive order was moved to Executive Order 11491, which was also allowing collective bargaining in the federal government. And it was in 1978 when a statute was finally created to allow collective bargaining in the federal government. And so consistent with Anne Wagner's response, we are providing leadership and guidance to matters relating to the statute. We issue decisions based on unfair labor practices that might be occurring in the agencies, between unions and agencies in the federal government. We also determine the appropriateness of units as to who can be consolidated into a unit to be represented by a union. We also resolve duty to bargain issues. So if they're sitting at the bargaining table trying to figure out, is this particular language negotiable or not, we will make a ruling on that. And we would also, when there are grievances that go on in the agencies, between the unions and the agencies, as to something that might be wrong, those grievances can be then taken to an arbitrator. And arbitration awards can come to us on exceptions to arbitration awards. For example, if the arbitrator's award was contrary to law or something to that effect. We also, as our responsibility, we must train the parties to make sure they understand the statute. And so the FLRA has been very forefront in providing training to the parties on what the statute says and how it acts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoytman, kind of the same question. What is the OGE? What is your purpose?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The OGE's mission is to help and support federal employees in avoiding conflicts of interest, in meeting their own obligations under the federal ethics laws and regulations, and in general, in acting and carrying out their duties as public servants with a high degree of integrity. By extension, the hope is to cultivate public trust in the integrity of the federal workforce as well. OGE does this first by providing overall direction and leadership for the executive branch ethics program, issuing regulations, issuing interpretive guidance, issuing establishing programs and procedures. It's important to recognize that much of the executive branch ethics work is decentralized. Each agency has its own ethics program. It's those agency ethics programs that are closest to and in most direct contact with federal workers. And so OGE provides guidance and support to those agency ethics programs, tries to hold them to a high standard as well, monitoring their work, evaluating whether they are complying with programmatic requirements, and generally sort of upholding the importance of acting with courage when necessary and implementing a sound program. Beyond that, OGE has a role in explaining ethics laws to the public as well. And obviously, as director, I personally would have a role in supporting the team at OGE just as a manager of the agency.
So I'm convinced that organizations either get better or worse. They never stay the same. And I think priorities is so very important, whether it's a finite amount of financial resources or otherwise. Just each of you take a minute or less and tell me what top priorities would be if confirmed. Mr. Hoytman, we'll start with you this time. Your priorities, please.
Thank you, Senator. So the first priority I would say is to one thing to step back and recognize is that OGE experiences a surge in its work every 4 years or so following a presidential election, because one of its core functions that it has a direct implementing role in is the vetting of nominees, helping any administration kind of staff up important leadership positions, supporting the Senate's work in evaluating those nominees. And so I know that OGE already is focused on this, as they are every 4 years, and is undertaking a lot of work to prepare for that surge in nominee vetting. I would seek to support that. That has to be priority one because that will dominate the next year. Beyond that, I would seek to spend some time on relationship building, both with agency ethics officials, with department leadership, where that would be useful, and with the constituencies that are relevant for the ethics community and the work that we do. Okay. Those would be my first priorities.
Thank you. Anne Wagner, what would be your priorities?
Senator, my priorities would be to deal with the increased caseload that the authority is facing with the limited resources that we have, that it has, and I think to maximize technology to the extent possible to achieve efficiencies in productivity and addressing the caseload in a fair and efficient way. Beyond that, my experience at OSC has certainly instilled in me the idea that training and education with regard to employee and labor organization agency management rights and responsibilities could be a vital tool to preventing labor disputes arising in the federal sector arena. And I think that preventing labor disputes is as important as resolving them once they occur. So I would hope to make that one of my priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Kiko, what would be your priorities?
Yes, Senator. I think, first of all, we have a job to do, and that is to issue decisions that come before us, and we want to do that in an efficient way as we can. I'd also want to support the chairman in any activities and priorities that she might have in attempting to manage our flat budgets. And I'd also like to continue the good work of the FLRA in its training programs as it continues to offer a numerous number of training courses and YouTube videos and that sort of thing to assist the stakeholders in understanding our statute and learning how to solve some of their disputes on their own without necessarily having to come to us.
Thank you so much.
That's good. Good to be back. Thank you, Senator Marshall. I'd also like to thank Senator Blumenthal for starting off this hearing with you, Senator Marshall. Thank you for kicking it off. It's a busy day today. We're running around, which is why people will be coming and going as we go forward. But I want to welcome each of our nominees. So thank you for being here, and congratulations to each of you on these nominations and your willingness to do this important work. Ms. Kiko, I'll start with you. After you became chairman of the FLRA in 2017, employee morale at the agency dropped significantly. Employee engagement and satisfaction scores based on the annual Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey fell to their lowest levels in a decade during your first 2 years as chair. So my question for you is, how did you respond to the drop in morale, and what changes did you make to your management approach, and how would you see things moving forward?
Thank you, Chairman Peters, and I appreciate the question. Certainly, we had some challenges when I first became chairman, and being chairman, you have to make some very difficult decisions, and a lot of that had to do with our flat budgeting, and so we had to close 2 regional offices, and that was a very big, difficult time for our agency. And I spent an awful lot of time identifying what some of the concerns were in the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, and I attacked them one by one to make sure that each of the employees' concerns were addressed under the FEVs. At the same time that the FEVs reports were coming out, we were in the middle of building a new strategic plan for the agency. And as such, I created teams so that every employee in the agency was able to be involved in building that strategic plan, hoping that every aspect of their concerns were addressed in the strategic plan. And we had many different teams, employee engagement teams, performance accountability teams, digest teams, health and wellness teams, everything to attempt to address some of the concerns that the employees had. And based on a lot of those issues that we did, the other issue that I recognized is that there had not been a general counsel in the general counsel's office for quite some time. And so I took the opportunity to fill that position so that there would be some leadership in the general counsel's office. I think as a result of a lot of those efforts, our scores did rise 20 points while I was chairman in 2020. So I I believe that the efforts that we made a difference in attempting to raise those scores.
Well, are you committed to taking the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey results into account as you move forward and prioritizing employee engagement morale at the FLRA?
Absolutely.
Give me a sense of how you will do that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very important survey of employees' viewpoints, and it's really important to understand where people are feeling and how they are. An engaged employee is an excellent employee, and we want to make sure that that's the highest priority. Absolutely.
Okay, very well. Mr. Heidemann, I worked with Senator Grassley on the Executive Branch Accountability and Transparency Act, which would make it easier for the public to access the ethics disclosures of government officials. This kind of transparency, I think, is absolutely vital so the public can hold folks accountable. So my question for you, sir, is if confirmed, how will you work to make transparency a priority and increase public access to this important ethics information?
Thank you, Chairman Peters. I too believe in the value of transparency and access to information about our most senior officials and information that allows the public to evaluate decisions that the government is making. So in terms of how I would prioritize that issue, I would say it would be built into kind of everything that we do at OGE. OGE already has a track record of considering sort of ways it can use its website, its platform, to sort of affirmatively make some information available to the public in an easier way, a less onerous way. And I would say we would continually evaluate, are there additional categories of information in OGE's custody and control? And especially, is there information about OGE's own decision-making, priorities, et cetera, that we could explain our own work better to the public?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Heidemann, as you know, one of OG's key responsibility is conducting oversight of agency ethics programs all across the government. So my question for you is, how are you preparing to make this transition from serving as an agency ethics official to actually one conducting rigorous oversight of agency ethics officials across the government?
Thank you. That role in monitoring the work of agency ethics programs, holding them to a high standard, is a core part of OGE's mission. It's one I'm committed to. I think that having the perspective of coming from an agency and knowing what it's like to administer an ethics program day in, day out will offer some valuable perspective. And I'd say there are kind of two aspects. One is that having open communication and a strong relationship with the agency ethics programs actually is a tool for effective monitoring and compliance work as well. OGE needs to understand the agency ethics programs, the challenges they're facing, the constraints they operate under, and how they work to evaluate whether they are doing that work effectively or not. Beyond that, it's important for the director of OGE and OGE as a whole to hold agencies to a high standard. And so I need to be in a position to communicate that. If we want agencies to have the courage to offer firm ethics guidance, even in unwelcome circumstances, to sort of make the demand for program support that they need, then they need to know that that's a standard and an expectation we have and that we're there to support them as well.
Great, thank you. Senator Hawley, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the nominees for being here. Mr. Heidemann, if I could just start with you. You just said that you have experience administering an agency ethics program. You're at the State Department right now, is that right?
Yes, that's right, Senator.
And among other things, you've been the legal advisor for ethics and financial disclosures.
Yes, I'm the Assistant Legal Advisor for Ethics and Financial Disclosure, which is the ethics office for the State Department.
Right, okay, very good. Are you familiar, you've been tracking what's going on with the Energy Department when it comes to ethics, financial disclosures, and stock trading? Are you familiar? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, Senator. I obviously haven't been involved and don't have a depth of knowledge.
Well, let me give you just a little flavor of it. So last year, the Wall Street Journal reported that hundreds of Energy Department officials hold stocks related to the agency's work despite repeated warnings that there were conflicts of interest here. How does that strike you? Good practice?
Well, Senator, I guess a couple of observations. Obviously, I can't speak to the specific facts of any employee at the Department of Energy or guidance that the Energy Ethics Program has provided. But this relates to the question Chair Peters asked. I would say it's important for OGE to be in a position to evaluate the work of any agency ethics program and to make clear that we hold them to a high standard and want them to hold their employees to a high standard and follow through, right? It's not just explaining the rules, it's communicating them and doing what you can to build a culture of ethics.
Well,
ultimately, it's each employee's responsibility to abide by the ethics laws. But we have high expectations for our ethics program as well.
You have high expectations, and the public, frankly, has high expectations for public officials. And I just have to tell you, I mean, this is a government-wide problem. It's a problem in this Congress. You've got elected officials, members of this Congress, who are trading stock and making profits. Like, the public looks at this and they say, oh my gosh, how do these people manage to do it? I mean, it is unbelievable. They get elected to Congress, and they become the most savvy stock market traders in the world. It's amazing. There are whole websites devoted to tracking members of Congress's stock trades. It's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, which is why I again call on this Congress, as I have for years now, to take action to ban stock trading and stock holding by members of Congress. But it's not just in Congress, it's in the executive branch. And I can just tell you, when you have hundreds of members of the Energy Department and other executive branch agencies who hold stocks in companies that they supposedly regulate, that is incredibly destructive of public trust. Yesterday, I talked to the Secretary of the Department of Energy. She has held stock. She personally has violated the Stock Act 9 separate times. That was before she misled the United States Senate by saying she no longer held any individual stocks. She told us she had sold all of them. Turns out that was false. She had not sold them. It turns out she still held individual stocks, including stocks her department regulates, in companies her department regulates. I mean, this is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, and it's endemic. It's endemic. So my message to you is, I hope that if you are confirmed, that you will be absolutely a bulldog about going after this and telling executive branch officials, listen, you can't own stocks in companies that you regulate. We can't allow hundreds of government officials to continue to willfully violate the law that this, and we ought to update the law, by the way. I mean, there's a simple solution to this. We ought to just ban executive officials at a leadership level from owning individual stocks. I mean, that would do it. But we at least should be complying with the laws on the books. And I just think it is outrageous that executive branch officials, and I'm sure this goes on, by the way, in all administrations, but it is outrageous that these people are trading stock in companies that they regulate. I mean, it raises the question, who is running the department? Is it the corporations whose stock that these officers are so attentive to? So my point in this, Mr. Hitman, is I hope that you will be very firm in this, and I hope that if you are confirmed, you will work to make sure that executive branch officials, number one, understand the law, but number two, comply with the law and don't willfully violate it over and over and over. And all I can say is, when you have the head of a department, the head of an agency, the head of the Energy Department violating the Stock Act 9 separate times and continuing to, frankly, lie about it to Congress, that is a big problem, a big problem. In my few remaining moments here, let me shift gears. Ms. Wagner, let me ask you, from a federal labor relations point of view, when it comes to labor contracting within the federal government, this committee recently passed, I'm delighted to say unanimously, passed my legislation along with Senator Booker that would make it harder for the federal government, make it impossible for the federal government to contract with companies that have child labor in their supply chain. I mean, does that sound like a good thing to ban to you? I mean, to stop the use of child labor in federal contracting?
Yes, Senator, it does.
I'm glad to hear that. You know, this is a very serious issue. Since 2018, the Labor Department has seen a 70% increase in children being illegally employed by companies. The New York Times has published reports about well-known brands such as Tyson Foods, who have done business in many states, including mine, that have illegal child labor running rampant in their facilities. And a lot of these companies get contracts, as it relates to you, contracts with the federal government. And so they're getting they're bidding on getting federal contracts, they're getting federal money, and yet they've got child labor in their supply chain. So I'm glad to hear you say that you are opposed to this. I hope this legislation will soon become law, and I hope that you'll support efforts to root out any kind of child labor in federal contracting, in federal government employment practices with these independent contractors. I mean, do I have your commitment that you would do that?
Senator Hawley, I share your outrage at that practice. I would have to note that the FLRA is regulates in the sphere of labor unions that represent federal employees, not contractor employees. So I'm not sure the scope of the FLRA's authority to intercede in that practice to address it. I suspect that's a Department of Labor.
But you support the effort. You support this legislation. You support the effort to root out child labor from federal contracting,
Yes.
federal government. Fantastic. My time's expired, and I know there are other senators who want to ask questions. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Rosen, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Chairman Peters. I really appreciate you holding this hearing, and I want to thank the nominees for being here and for testifying today. And so, Mr. Hitman, we're going to continue with you because current law allows former members of Congress who have committed a felony related to their time in office to keep their taxpayer-funded pensions even after a conviction. So, they must forfeit this government benefit only after exhausting all their appeals, which can drag the process on clearly for years and provide a windfall of hundreds of thousands of dollars to convicted felons. And so I think it's unacceptable that corrupt officials, government officials, can continue to benefit off the back of taxpayers. That's why last year I introduced the No Corruption Act. It's bipartisan legislation with Senator Rick Scott, to close this loophole by barring members of Congress who are convicted of felonies related to their official duties from collecting taxpayer-funded pensions. After advancing this through committee, our bill unanimously passed the Senate. So, Mr. Hitman, confirm, would you be supportive of a similar policy for a member of the President's Cabinet or other high-ranking executive branch officials convicted of felonies related to their time in office?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The specifics of that issue are one that I would need to study more and consider, but I will say that while OGE, the Office of Government Ethics, primary role is to support ethics officials in complying with their ethics obligations in the first place, there is an important accountability and penalties where necessary for violations of the ethics obligations are critical as well. And if I'm confirmed as director of OGE, I'm committed to supporting accountability efforts, investigations, and so forth, whether by inspectors general, the Department of Justice, whoever it may be.
Thank you. And I'm going to continue with you also because the Office of Government Ethics, it lacks the statutory authority to enforce sometimes these ethics violations. So current law only allows OGE to make recommendations to an agency when one of its employees is alleged to have violated ethics laws. And should the agency in question ignore or reject the recommendation of OGE, you're only able to inform the president of the agency's actions, not overrule them or make a further recommendation. So, Mr. Hitman, how does this lack of enforcement authority limit OGE's ability to maintain the integrity of the executive branch? And if confirmed, would you like to see OGE receive additional authority so it could take disciplinary actions against wrongdoers?
Thank you for that question as well, Senator. I think that, as I mentioned in my previous answer, the two sides of the coin are both important. OGE's fundamental role is supporting compliance up front. Right, cultivating a culture of compliance among the federal workforce, including our most senior officials, and supporting them in meeting their ethics obligations. At the same time, supporting appropriate accountability is important. I will say that in my experience in providing guidance to cabinet officials, brand new employees, people who are considering joining the State Department, employees at all levels, it has been effective and helpful to have that role as advisor, someone who's there to support them, and employees are genuinely appreciative. So I do think that a distinction between guidance and advice on the one hand and enforcement on the other in most cases is helpful and useful. Whether there are specific authorities that would benefit OGE in instances where it has identified a violation of the ethics regulations or something that it considers to pose an unacceptable risk of a conflict, for example, something like that, I would need to consider and appreciate the opportunity to consult further if confirmed. I do think that in most cases, OGE's work in directing agencies to take appropriate action is effective. There can be cases at the highest profile and most often where agencies or the administration refuses to take action. In those cases, I think what's important for OGE is to be clear and transparent about its position, its understanding of the appropriate application of the law, so the public can understand what OGE is doing and kind of where it stands in those cases.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you on that because advising and guiding, that's great. But if people know that there's no consequence, then that could lead to more significant problems. And we talk about a culture of transparency and accountability. Transparency plays that critical role in increasing public trust in the federal government. So that's where I'm leading with all of this. So one of the Office of Government Ethics' foremost responsibility is to ensure that ethics documents like disclosure forms are readily available to and accessible for the general public. So how do you plan to ensure that executive agencies increase visibility of their own ethics documents, particularly when you can't compel them to do so? And would it be helpful for you to be able to compel them to do that?
Thank you, Senator. Well, OGE does have authority to establish programmatic requirements for agency ethics programs. And there are provisions in the ethics regulations for public access to public financial disclosure reports. So in some ways, this is a space where OGE has current authority already. I am committed to always considering, with regard to any category of documents, either new or existing, does it serve the public interest to make information proactively available? And how can we build that into a normal standard operating procedure? I will say that in my mind, information as director of OGE, information about OGE's own programs, the guidance that it's providing, its own activities, transparency about that would be critically important. Beyond that, when we come to information about our public officials, that too can play an important role in informing the public and providing confidence that those officials don't have conflicts of interest. And I would say that there's a little bit of a spectrum here, right, where information about our most senior officials, our political appointees, those who have a broad range of discretion and authority is the most important, while also taking into account either programmatic limitations or constraints or privacy interests for other federal employees.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Well, I want to thank our nominees once again for being with us here today and your willingness to serve in these very important positions. The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires, and without objection, this information will be made part of the hearing record, with the exception of financial data, which is on file and available for public inspection at the committee offices. The hearing record will remain open till 12 p.m. tomorrow, April 18th, for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is now adjourned.